Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio.
Welcome, dear friends, to Kardec Radio, here in our special anniversary. It's been 10 years, can you believe it? And throughout the day, pretty much almost like 24 hours, hosts from around the world giving their conversations, their speeches, their stories about how much this work is so good for all of us. There's so much to share. But now it's a very special moment. In these 10 years, all the programs were amazing. But some, were quite special, were very special. And Dr. Bernie Siegel is here with us. What an honor for us. I was talking to the spirit guide, Mentor Joseph. We are doing these works for 10 years. So many guests have come along. And every time we talk to them, we learn so many new things. But tell me more why you plan on bringing always more and bringing these very special guests. And the answer he gave me was very straightforward. He said, Vanessa, because they are the pioneers. Dr. Siegel is the pioneer. You and I are living a pandemic still. It's a challenge for many of us. And the field of medicine, of healthcare, is once again in the hot seat. Is there much to be changed? Not only medicine, in all of us, but the medical practice needs a fix. Let's say a fixer up, as we say at HDTV. And Dr. Siegel is this doctor of the future who lives in the present, and he gives us a glimpse of what medicine is going to be in the future. Because he's not the technical doctor who prescribe things and say, thank you and bye in 15 minutes. He cares. He wrote several books. They're still changing lives. Books that talk about the power we have in us, love. But in the last year, the most amazing part of it, you think he's done and over? Not quite. He has books he has a beautiful book with his grandson. And he has books he's written as well lately. And a special one that we at Kardec Radio are looking forward to talking more. All of them, but especially this one. It's about previous lives. His very previous lives, stories. 3 men, 6 lives. There's so much to learn. I know you're here like saying, Vanessa, please bring him in. I know, but if you want more information about him and about the books, go to the website, berniesiegelmd.com, and you can explore 10,000 things that are being done and the resources, the catalog, and everything. So now, without further ado, here he is. Oh my gosh, we're so happy. Thank you for being with us, Dr. Siegel.
Thank you, Vanessa.
How have you been during this pandemic?
Say that again?
How have you been during the pandemic?
Fine.
Yeah?
I lived the sermon. Let's put it that way. So yes, I'm used to a mask. I'm a surgeon, so having a mask on is no problem. And when I say I lived the sermon, I mean I've had my vaccines and everything, and I don't keep worrying about everything and make my body vulnerable. Mm-hmm. See, I picture my future as being healthy, and that if I get a vaccine, I don't have a reaction to it or whatever it is. But, I've learned this from people getting chemotherapy, radiation, and other things. Because the doctors at the hospital, thought that nurses had made mistakes, that the machine wasn't working, and then they'd call me and say, Bernie, I thought everything was wrong. I saw your name in the chart, and I knew it was a crazy patient. So I said, how come you don't have any reaction to treatment? I get out of the way and I let it go to my tumor. So they became Siegel's crazy patients. And that was an affectionate term because it was wonderful to take care of them. They didn't have side effects. And even the nurses would say, your patients are refusing pain medication after surgery. I said, did it ever occur to you they're not hurting? And they'd look at me like I'm insane. You know, you cut somebody open and they don't hurt. But it really changed the attitude of so many people at the hospital, you know, because when I started out, I keep a magazine next to me that I'm on the cover, but the top, it says the controversial Dr. Siegel. See, that's what the article's about. But when you took care of the people, the controversy stopped. I mean, let me give you one more story.
Sure.
I never stopped telling, but my father-in-law had a spinal cord injury and he had a nurse's aide taking care of him at the house. And she told me, oh, I told my cousin from Kentucky to come up here because her doctor said she has about 2 months to live and there's no point in getting more treatment and being sick for 2 months. But she said, I told her, come up here. That Dr. Siegel makes people well all the time. Now, I wasn't thrilled, you know, with hearing that in the sense of what she was promising someone. But I also knew you'd be amazed sometimes at what happens, you know, that it was okay to lie to people. I call it deceiving people into health.
Wow.
Because I was, in a sense, hypnotizing them because I did a lot of children's surgery. So just a simple example. You take an alcohol sponge and you say to the child, oh, you're lucky. This is a new sponge they just made. It not only cleans your skin, but it numbs it so you won't feel the needle. And the kids would say, oh, why don't the other doctors do that? That was wonderful. You know, and that simple statement changed them. So when she said, I told my cousin to come up here, I thought, oh, that's going a little far, you know. Okay, so she shows up. She had leukemia. I said, I'm a surgeon. That's not my thing. I called my oncology friends who also had thought I was a nut to begin with, but then learned from the patient. So this one of them called me and said, Bernie, I've seen the woman. I agree with her doctor. She has about 2 months to live, but I know you and your crazy patients, so I'll give her hope. And then he would send me a note each week when she came into his office that she was doing okay, doing well, very well. And at the end of 6 weeks, his note said, she is in complete remission. And then his sense of humor was, isn't chemotherapy wonderful? Because he had no hope for it at all to help her. And she went home, no sign of cancer.
Oh, my Lord.
And that's when you learn how powerful the mind is. I'm not trying to deceive people. No. You know, yes, if it helps them, I don't mind deceiving them. But it's became more about giving hope, you know, that faith and hope and showing people. So when I would get them to do drawings, and they hand me a drawing of their treatment and it showed the devil giving them poison, I said, this is not for you. You either change your attitude or don't go and get it. Or the operating room was an empty black box and they're lying there all alone. I said, don't go. You either have to change your image of it and let your body know it's not going to be like that, or just don't go. And a lot of them would then go home and visualize it all going beautifully. Mm-hmm. So a week or two later, they'd hand me a drawing and it'd be beautiful. I'd say, no problem, go ahead. And, you know, and of course, there were other people who said, well, I'm not going to do it then. I'll go enjoy my life. And that's the other funny thing. Well, it wasn't funny. It was wonderful. Mm-hmm. Because people you thought were going to die, mm-hmm. they said, well, if I've got a few months to live, I might as well enjoy myself. And they moved, quit their jobs, started doing what they loved, got a house on the ocean, a house in the mountains. I mean, these are all true stories that I know these people. And the funniest one was calling up to say, why wasn't I invited to the funeral? Because the man went out to Colorado to die in the mountains. He said, it's beautiful here. And a year later, I still hadn't heard from the family because I told them I want to come to the funeral. So I called up to criticize the family. But the man I thought had died answered the phone. And these were his exact words. He said, Bernie, it was so beautiful here, I forgot to die. And it wasn't just mountains. There were people buying in Florida a house on the ocean, something they always wanted but never did. And the wife said, why don't you buy the house? They tell you have a few months to live. Let's get the house. And he lived for 5.5 years and taught his hospital something, because they were all expecting him to die and telling him he'll die. And then he lives for 5.5 years and changed. But it isn't me talking. Remind me.
We want to hear from you.
I know, but I want to tell you I do the talking, but I'm not putting it in. Now I forgot what I was going to say.
I want to mention
that's all right. Listen a minute.
You have a CD on affirmations that people should buy.
I have CDs, yeah, but let me say this, that what I learned was I have an angel. I met him in a meditation, told me his name was George. I was kind of disappointed. I expected somebody special. But one day, like I'm talking to you, I had an outline for a 2-hour talk, and I wasn't paying any attention to it. I was just talking. And I thought, it's better than I had planned, so just let it go. And I just let it come out of me. The first person who came up to me after the talk said, I heard you before, that was better than usual. I said, I agree with you. The next person came up and said, there was a man standing in front of you for the entire lecture, so I drew his picture for you.
Oh, wow. And
that was my angel that I'd met in a meditation. And his name, he said, was George. And after a funeral, because I didn't understand why he was dressed the way he was. A year or so later, I spoke at a Christian funeral, and the mystic and healer, Alga Worrell, was there. And she came up to me after the funeral and said, Bernie, are you Jewish? I said, why are you asking? Because I spoke at a Christian funeral? No, because there's a rabbi standing next to you. And she described him, and it was exactly George. And then I understood what he was wearing, were all the spiritual and religious garments that he's used to. And from then on, I have just left things to George. I mean, that I don't have to prepare because he's prepared. So he uses me and I talk. And I'll tell you, all these experiences I have are what make me who I am and why I talk about things. I'm not making them up. I've experienced them. I've lived them. As a child, I had a near-death experience. As an adult, I had a past life experience because I was talking to someone like I am to you. Mm-hmm. And I told her how busy I was. And she said, why are you living this life? And I went into a trance over that phone call. And that people have to understand, this is a part of all of us. Mm-hmm. Who we are, why we are, the things we like to do. They're all related to who we have been in past lives. And let me go on to tell you, people understand heaven and life. What I've really come to understand is that I won't call it hell, but it's like we're going to school here in life. Mm-hmm. And when it comes time for us to die, then you head up to heaven. But it always interested me. What do you call a graduation? You call it a commencement. Why? You finished with school. What do you? But I realized we're not finished. And so where do we go? We go to the real school in heaven. And depending on the level we have reached in our lives, you get put into a grade there. And you keep learning, and you can move up more grades and come back to earth and say, I want to learn more and do more, and then go up there, because you end up in first grade in heaven. You're not going to have much fun there. But, if you're in high school or college in heaven, oh, it's beautiful. And you'll enjoy all the people and what you're doing and the surroundings. And these are not things I make up.
No.
Because in the studies of people, we have that organization called IANS, Institute for the Advancement of Near-Death
Experience.
Stories. And so when you listen to these people, at first it used to sound, wow, that's crazy. How could that be? But, when more than one person has that experience, I keep my mind open.
Yeah.
And I don't treat them the way I was treated years ago. When you have it happen to you, it's real, and you listen to them. So I'd say for people to realize that what they're doing is learning, graduating, learning more, coming back to a higher level of life, and contributing more. Yeah.
And then it's amazing, Dr. Siegel, because from where you've started this breakthrough medical approach, and now I would say reaching this climax of connecting us to the understanding that we are so many lives of experiences. Would you like to share with us a little bit more about, the book that came last year? It's so recent, The 3 Men, 6 Lives.
Yeah. One of them is mine. I wrote it as fiction because I didn't want to put the people in and expose them, and get involved. But I do mention one of them is me. So I created a doctor to live my experience. And let me say this too, because when that person said to me, why are you living this life over the phone? I said to her, oh my God. She said, what? What did I do? Did I upset you? I said, I just saw myself with a sword in my hand killing. I said, maybe that's why I became a surgeon, to help people with a knife.
Oh.
And one of the kids one day brought in something that I'm sure related to my past life. He came home from school. He made this big poster with the word words written all over it. But if you write words, 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 they become swords, swords, swords. And when he brought it in the house, I looked at it and I thought, wow, I can kill a cure with words or swords. I mean, it just, and as a child, it was like, why did he do this? Even his teacher said to him, why did you do that? It was like he was coming from a different place. And I think it was that consciousness that got to him and got him to do it, to make me think about it. But what happened, I don't know, months later after that phone call, I was flying cross country and my wife didn't accompany me this time. So I'm sitting quietly on the plane and I went into a trance and I saw myself with a sword. And this is the story that I had to go and see a therapist about, because, and this is the way I told it to him. I said, my Lord, I was a knight in Ireland. And my Lord said, I want you to kill the neighbor's daughter. He's causing me a lot of trouble and he won't listen. I got to teach him a lesson. I said, why don't I kill him? No, I want you to kill his daughter and teach him a lesson. And what if I don't? Then I'll kill you. All right, I'm going. And I went and I told the people, can I stay overnight here at your, castle? I'm on a trip. And they said, sure, you can stay. And I found out where the young woman's room was. And I went up there that night, went in. I didn't know she had a dog who started to make some noise. So I used my sword to just split his head open and kill him. And that woke her up. because I wanted to kill her in her sleep so it wouldn't be so painful for her. And she turned over in the bed, and it was my wife.
Oh.
And I picked up the sword and chopped my wife's head off.
Oh.
I cried for hours and hours. And then I came back to my Lord. I said, "Here, you happy?" And I dropped the head in front of him. And he said, "I'm not the one responsible. I didn't do it. You did it." And I thought, what's he talking about? I went to get therapy from a Jungian therapist, James Hillman. And I started to tell him the story because I said, this has been so painful to me, and it's making me a wreck. And he said, "Bernie, did you hear what you just said?" I said, "What?" He said, "You started telling me your story and you said, 'My Lord.'" I said, "Yeah, it's the Lord of the castle." He said, "No, Bernie, it's your Lord. You need to go home and relive this." And as soon as he said that, I realized, wow, because I've always questioned Abraham saying yes to God when he's supposed to have his son die. Or, my fantasy always was, if I were Jesus, I would have jumped off the cross and showed people I can perform miracles. And so their faith is what allowed them to accept that.
Yeah.
So I relived it. And when my Lord said, "I want you to kill the neighbor's daughter," I said, "Okay, I'll go and do it." And then he said, "No, I just wanted to know if you had faith in me and I could trust you. So I want you to go and bring her and her father here and we'll work something out." And I went and spent time with them and was talking to the daughter saying, "You can trust me. I won't let anything happen to you. I want to resolve it." And the father said, "I heard you. I can believe you from the way you were talking to my daughter. So we'll go." And we went. And what was the resolution? What my wife and I did in this life. See, my Lord said, "I can see that you and this young woman have established a relationship. Why don't you two get married? We'll give you the land that we're fighting over, and it'll be your gift. And then there's nothing left for us to fight over. We're all one family." And I really felt that my wife and I marrying in this life helped heal that past tragedy. Because, again, there are no coincidences. My wife and I were working at a camp, first grade girls, first grade boys.
Wow.
And when I say no coincidences, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross always used to say to me, "Bernie, there are no coincidences." And Jung said it this way: the future is unconsciously prepared long in advance and therefore can be guessed by clairvoyance. So they're reading you when they tell you where you're going. And that's why the drawings I did also had past, present, and future. People knew where they were going, so they drew it, and I could tell them, what's the right thing for them to do. But anyway, my wife and I were standing at the pool watching the children. And I said to her, "It's nice that the pool's open at night, that we can come here and take a swim and cool off." And she said, "Are you asking me for a date?" And I wasn't. I was just talking about the pool. But she was so pretty when she asked me that. I said, "Oh, yes, I'm asking for a date." So she said, "All right, I'll come here tonight with you." And that night, though, she's never on time. That was a good thing. So we went and just sat and talked in a club for hours and got to know each other. And that coincidence led to our getting married.
Oh, wow.
Well, I was still a medical student. She finished college, got a job, and I went on to medical school. But I knew that we were meant to be together. She had an effect on me, her face, that just, had power over me, which I didn't understand until I learned about my past life and that she was a part of it. And so we had a love, and I mean this, that most people never understand or achieve. When we were together, we needed nothing. I mean, if we're sitting in the kitchen, we're happy.
Wow.
You don't have to have a vacation, go somewhere, do something, go to a show or a movie. We just sit there together. Yeah. I mean, I have to say, she gave birth to 5 children, so we were busy people. But,
But what would you say to people, since you mentioned about, there's no coincidence and you're together because it makes sense in the multitude of lives. But what about the couples who do not get along well? What would you hypothesize is happening there?
they have to get in touch with their consciousness. What are they looking for? What do they want? Marriage, it's a relationship. It's not, I want to get something. It's giving to the relationship. And if they understand a true relationship, then they get along with all the people. And I mean, just give you some examples. My wife was so good at. When I would get angry, you got 5 kids in the house, it can get pretty. My wife would say to me, "You're so handsome when you're angry." And I'd bust out laughing, and I'd say to her, that doesn't solve my problem, but it makes me feel better. And I'm always giving women advice on how to treat their husbands, you see, because she could get you to smile and be comfortable. And she was coaching. Maybe that's a good way to put it. She didn't say you're a horrible person. What are you doing? That's all wrong. She was teaching me how to be a better husband and a father. Because even our kids, I mean, one of them said, "You getting a divorce?" I said, "What are you asking me that for?" You yell a lot. I said, "I yell when I don't like what's going on here." I said, "But I love you and I love your mother." But I thought it was so interesting, you see, that they would come up to me and confront me like that.
Yeah.
And tell me how to be a better father. Yeah.
But it's amazing because you're so open. You talk so openly. So many people don't want to talk about these things.
That's George.
Okay.
You see, I don't have control over what I say. I just get up and out it flows.
Oh.
And it's, as I say, I learned from him, and it's amazing. But I know that it's, you see, I'm not thinking about what I'm saying. You could say I'm feeling it. It's in my consciousness. It's just coming forth.
But would you name it? Because like Alan Kardec in his books, he says it's mediumship. Would you name it mediumship?
Well, those are names of things. So I'd have to read his complete definition.
Yeah.
But if you said George is my medium, fine. But I think we all have angels. I mean, as I said, I was choking to death as a 4-year-old and left my body.
Mm-hmm.
I was thrilled as a 4-year-old. This is so interesting. I can remember my thinking, oh boy, I prefer to be dead. This is fascinating. I'm sorry my parents will find me dead, but this is so neat. And then I was watching, and this is the other thing. So I'd say, yes, there is a medium, because we are not our bodies. Mm-hmm. When I talked about it, I'd say the boy on the bed or the body. And I thought to myself, why don't you say me? And I realized, because that isn't me. I'm not that body. See, I'm the consciousness, the medium, whatever words you want to use to describe it. And I knew I wasn't supposed to die then. I learned that later because my angel George did a Heimlich maneuver. I was watching. I thought the boy on the bed was having a seizure because he got picked up and, bent over and squeezed. I could see that, but I didn't know what that was. I didn't know about the angel then. And all the pieces of the toys came out that I had put in my mouth. See, I was imitating some men who were working in the house. I took a toy apart and put the pieces in my mouth because they were holding nails in their mouth. And then I aspirated them. And once he did that, all the pieces came out. I took a breath and I was back in my body. And was I happy? No, because I yelled out, "Who did that?" It's like I said to God, I wanted to die and you screwed up. you know? um, yes, you feel bad, and other children, I've learned from them too when they had near death. They said, well, I felt bad, my parents will find me, but I really wanted to be dead too. We all had that same feeling. It was so fascinating. But I thought, well, if God decided I'm not supposed to be dead, stop complaining. And when my mother walked in, she just let out a shriek because she could tell what had happened. Saw the vomit and all the pieces of toys, and she knew that I had almost choked.
But do you have that sensation like when we practice spirituality, we tend to, especially in Spiritism, we talk about let's live a life as if we are spirits on earth connected to the body. Do you still feel that sensation like you are not your body?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You do? Because it's not
I mean,
easy for
the
many
body
people.
is like a tool that we're given to work with, because if you're a spirit, you can't fix the plumbing. You can't take your kids to the doctor. You know what I mean? You can't work. So we're given a body to achieve with our life what our spirit wants us to do. And like I've done a lot of portrait paintings, and I'm sure somewhere in my past life, I don't know, I may, you can have more than one of them, that I was an artist because I started painting. I mean, our house is filled with portraits, all the walls of all our kids, grandchildren, my wife. The one of myself, I learned a lot from, because let me tell you why. See, we can bury that spirit in us and never know because we're busy thinking and doing.
Yeah.
And I drew a picture for Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. That's part of what changed my life, because that's when she said, why is 11 important? I said, I've been helping cancer patients for 11 months. I said, but why did you ask that number? Oh, you drew 11 trees in the picture. What are you covering up? What are you asking me that for? Well, you used a white crayon on a white piece of paper. So what are you covering up? And boy, by the time she was done, I thought, I'm drawing an outdoor scene, and from my imagination, where I had met George walking on a path, and she's asking me all these questions about my life. And so that's when I went with crayons to the hospital, get people to draw, and how much they revealed about their lives, see their consciousness, and how it came forth, and then helping them make decisions and my own. So I realized all of this is a part of me and a part of you and everybody else. So, we need to be in touch with that spirit, and it's there. I was thinking, I mentioned Olga Worrell. She's written books with her husband.
Yeah.
And one of the things I found fascinating, a story she was saying, that when she was a youngster, she walked into a house with her family, and she said to them, who's that old lady sitting on the sofa? And they said, there's no old lady sitting on the sofa. She said, yes, there is. And she described it. And it turned out to be the grandmother who had lived in the house and who had died. And the people hearing her tell who she saw knew who she was talking about. And those are the things I say that opened my mind and kept me open. So when Elizabeth did that, what are you covering up? Then it came, I used to paint when I came home. And I would say this to everybody: find what makes you lose track of time. Then you can't get older. See, then you're pure consciousness again. And you don't have a body and you don't age. And I found, both operating on people, because I was caring for them and loving them, I could operate when I had a back injury for 6 hours and have no trouble with my back because I wasn't in my body. I was caring.
Oh, wow.
And I noticed when I was painting, I could stand up for hours, and it never occurred to me Until I was painting one day and was interrupted by a phone call, and I had told this person not to call for several hours. I said, "Why are you calling back every few minutes?" He said, "Bernie, it's 2 hours since my last phone call." And that amazed me. I thought, oh, then I'm only a few minutes older. That's popped into my head. But when the kids and the pets all, this was a funny evening. I came home from the hospital, and all the dogs, cats, and other creatures and children were running out of the house. And I thought, what are they running for? Oh, I know. They don't want me to say, "I want you to sit down. I'm going to paint you, a portrait of you." So they all ran away. I said, all right, come back. I'll put up a mirror. I'll paint myself. And without even considering it as something unusual, I painted myself with a cap, mask, and gown on.
Oh, wow.
So you don't know it's me if you come in the house. It's somebody in the operating room, all covered up. And that's the name I gave that painting now.
Oh.
Cover up.
Cover.
Because it's just what Elizabeth said to me. What are you covering up? With a white crayon on a white piece of paper. I mean, you don't need to make snow on a mountain. It's already white. Yeah, those words. And I realized I had to stop covering up all my pain, all my problems, and get them out. And that's a big part of why I started helping cancer patients. I mean, the exact words from the woman were, "You're a nice guy. I feel better when I'm in the office with you, but I can't take you home with me. So I need to know how to live between office visits." So I started groups to help people live. And I may add, so many people are afraid that they won't do it right, that they don't join the group. That shocked me, to invite 100 people with cancer to a group, and 12 women showed up. I thought, what? Why didn't they all come?
Yeah.
And I realized they're afraid they'll do it wrong. You want them to read a book. You want them to draw a picture. You want them to answer questions about their life. So all those things. And I can say one simple question that helps so many people. You come in and you say, this was a woman about to be admitted to the hospital with severe migraine headaches. What does it feel like? Pressure. How does that word fit your life? Another woman. What is cancer? What are you going through? Failure. How does that fit your life? Well, my body failed. That's not my question. How does failure fit your life? Now, the woman who said pressure, it was her marriage. Her headache disappeared in 15 minutes and she went home to work on her marriage. The other woman who said, I have cancer, the failure, she said, oh, my parents committed suicide when I was a child. I must have been a failure as a child. So in 2 minutes, you have given them profound therapy, because they come up with those words. And some people do say it's a wake-up call, new beginning, because they have started living now that they come down with an illness. And one, again, George has another story for you. A woman who had polio as a child, and she never liked her body because of the deformities. So she develops a neurological disease later in life. And she said to me, I don't want to die hating my body because I've never liked it since I was a child. So I started lying naked in front of a mirror, completely naked, and loving my body. And I started the toes and worked my way up. She went into complete remission of her disease, loving her body. And other people have come back to the office and my partner yells, Bernie, come in here. You're interested in this stuff. Her cancer's gone. I said, tell them what you did. She said, I know, but tell them. I went home and I left my troubles to God. And again, it's physiologic. See, just to make it scientific for a minute, whether you're petting a dog, even that changes your chemistry. So after a heart attack, one doctor did a study, not his heart attack, but the patient. And if they had a dog in the house, they had a better survival rate than if they didn't have a dog in the house. It was quite a, large percentage. Or also, Harvard students, did your parents love you? No. 98% suffered a major illness by middle age. Yes, my parents loved me. 24% had suffered a major illness. So you begin to see what your life does to you, and how it sets you up. And this one student took actors. His professor thought he was a nutcase. So I called his professor and said, no, he's not. Let him do it. He took actors. He gave them a tragedy in which the man murdered the woman's husband and they meet. And then he gave them a comedy. And he's drawing their blood while they're reading the scripts of these two things. And of course, in the comedy, immune function went up, stress hormone levels went down. In the tragedy, the opposite. Stress hormone levels up, immune function down. And the simple example in lives is Monday morning, more heart attacks, strokes, suicides, and illnesses because people don't enjoy their lives. So Monday, boom.
Wow.
So your body thinks it's doing you a favor.
Yeah.
You don't have to go to work today. We'll have a heart attack.
It responds to you. And, John DeRosa is saying here, Bernie turned surgery into prayers. And I have a question. You've been helping with support groups, with your books, the CDs, the talks. What about the physicians, the medical field? I know.
That's the most frustrating of all.
Yeah.
Okay, Jung said it hundreds of years ago. The diagnosis helps the doctor, but it doesn't help the patient. For there, the key thing is the story. For it alone shows human background, human suffering, and only at that point can the doctor's therapy begin to operate. When I asked young doctors to draw a picture of themselves working as a doctor, I almost passed out when I saw the drawings.
Why?
Because there are no patients in the picture.
Oh.
They were sitting in the office with the diploma on the wall behind them, sitting behind a desk with a diploma on the wall. No patient. Some even drew instruments and computers and no people.
Oh, wow.
One drew himself standing in front of a lady in a wheelchair and handing her a tissue. See, he's being a doctor. He's helping her. She needed a tissue. And I have famous paintings hanging around me. And the doctor is in it. These are people dying, seriously ill. What's the doctor doing in every painting? Thinking. He's sitting there with his chin in his hand, thinking. He's not touching the patient. He's not saying to the parents, pick up your baby. It's dying, but love your baby. You see, because there are a lot of, I don't make up any of these stories, but at the hospital, there was a newborn who was quite ill and the parents couldn't touch it because it was in isolation and everything. But then the staff felt that this kid is not going to survive, so we might as well let the parents come in and touch it. The mother took the baby, put it against her bare chest and breast, and the kid started suckling and came back to life. You see.
Oh,
and that's what doctors have to wake up to. The contact, the touch. Stop thinking and take care of the person. Yeah. And so, and Solzhenitsyn, that's why, like, I wrote the book, 3 Men, 6 Lives. It's true stories.
Uh-huh.
You could say you call it fiction, but fiction writers write the truth because they see it and they make a story out of it. Mm-hmm. In his book, Cancer Ward, he has this. One man comes in and says, hey, I found this book in the library of the hospital. It says here there are cases of self-induced healing, not recovery through treatment, but actual healing. See? Now, you never hear a doctor say that term. A patient gets well when they're not supposed to, They say, oh, you had a spontaneous remission. Hey, stupid, why don't you ask the patient how come they didn't die when they were supposed to? See, that's what I learned. Ask them, how come you didn't die? Then you heard stories and you could pass the information to others. Now, the symbol of it says it all. It was though a rainbow-colored butterfly fluttered out of the great open book, and they all held up their foreheads and cheeks for its healing touch as it flew past. Only the gloomy Padiev, with a hopeless and opposite expression on his face, croaked out, I suppose for that you need to have a clear conscience. Now, there's the whole story of why people get well when they're not supposed to, written by an author, you see, and why he had cancer. And I'd say intuitively, he understood that. It came to him in his consciousness, you know, and so he then writes about it. Because when I read that, it was really like, wow, look what jumped off the page at you. Oh, and let me tell you the reaction you get at the hospital. Another poem called Miss G by W.H. Auden. In it, a doctor comes home from the office, says to his wife, cancer's a funny thing. Childless women get it, and men when they retire. It's as if there had to be an outlet for their foiled creative fire. Now, I got yelled at from the audience of doctors. Just because it rhymes doesn't make it true. I laughed because I said, if it wasn't true, why would he write it? Because Solzhenitsyn had cancer. And it is true, you see. I mean, what makes you vulnerable at a certain time in your life? Well, let me give you an example. Well, I died a little over 3 years ago, maybe it's about 3.5 years now. And I went in, she died in her sleep. In our family, nobody really has trouble dying. When they're ready, as her father said, no pills, no dinner. And he went to sleep. You know, I mean, it just,
Oh, wow.
My father had such we had a big party because he said to my mother, I need to get out of here. She said, help him out of bed. I said, no, he's talking about his body. So we said, when do you want to die? Oh, Sunday afternoon. We had a big, beautiful party. My mother telling stories, which had my father laughing because he lost the coin toss and had to take her out. That was their first date. He died laughing, looking so healthy. I thought he was going to change his mind. But again, the mystical, 24 people said, we'll come to the party. He didn't die till the last person showed up and was announced.
Wow.
Then he took his last breath. But anyway, I walked in to wake my wife up and felt how cold her body was and knew she had died. And it was like I had a lightning bolt hit me in the chest. I've never had a feeling like that ever before. And 9 months later, my heartbeat went crazy. And it was so typical. I thought the person you love died, so what part of your body is going to have a problem?
Yeah.
And I went to the hospital. Now, you have to understand this. My wife was born on 9/9. And after she died, she was still visiting me. I was finding a dime and a penny everywhere because we were married on the 11th. And I mean, underneath things, it couldn't have been dropped there. Even one night, I was one morning fixing the bed and the sheets and blankets got pulled out of my hand. It was totally mystical because I'm pulling them this way and they fly the other way. And there was a dime and a penny on the mattress. And I knew my wife was saying, you know, good morning, hello. And I started saving all the dimes and pennies. And the kids, you know, found things too, so they knew. And she used to kiss me good morning. And you say, how could she do that? I heard when I woke up in the morning after she died, this sound. And I thought it's like somebody blowing out a candle. And I would feel a breeze on my face. And I knew she was kissing me good morning in that way. And even when I get up, the clock in the room will be 9:09. And I know she's saying, hey, come on, get up. And I open my eyes, I look at the clock, and I knew it was my wife saying, "Come on, get out of bed." But anyway, where was I now? Oh, yeah, I went to the emergency room.
Mm.
I walk in, and I hear a man's voice in the back yell, "Put him in room 9."
Mm.
I haven't even signed in. And so I thought, okay, I'm taken care of. My wife is here. They said, "We can't find a room for you in the hospital yet," which seemed very strange. This is at Yale. It's a big place.
Yeah.
And, but the next morning, "Oh, we got the room for you." I go upstairs. What room they put me in? 819.
Oh, wow.
Nines again. Then they give you a wristband which has the number of the case and the number of, for you. So all your records will be filed properly. And my number is, and 8 is a number for a new beginning, because 7 is like a cycle. Every religion has 7 days in a week, but different days in a month. So I saw 1-8, so I knew, okay, I'll be fine. It's a new beginning. Then 996633, everything added up to 9s again.
Yeah.
And the doctors and nurses got tired of me saying every time I go in for a visit, "I know, they all add up to 9." Because I'd immediately look at it, because the case too, not just my number, added up to 9 over and over again. It was just so funny. And well, I got to tell you all these crazy little things, because the other day I'm doing a support group for people. And the person who used to run it with me had died a few months ago. And I didn't know the host code. So I had to go searching for it. And when I found it, it was 9144. Again, 9 and 9. So I'll never forget it now, because it's an easy number to remember. Yeah.
But Dr. Siegel, when you're talking about how you read the signs of life, which is something that for people seems not to be very objective and concrete. And for example, we were talking about teaching medical students. I remember when I used to teach them at the University of Maryland, they're quite open to new things until sometime later, and then they change and become skeptical of 10,000 things.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because they're taught to think, not feel. And sadly, when things change is when the medical students, or after their doctors, they or their spouses get cancer. Then I have doctors write books and send them to me telling me, "Thank you, what a wonderful person you are." And originally they're telling me I'm nuts. But now that my wife has cancer, "You're a big help. You're wonderful. Thank you." So it's survivor behavior. And it's, I would say to people, "Why didn't you die when you were supposed to?" They had a story. One of my favorites was a landscaper. I wrote about him in one of my books.
Mm-hmm.
It was in February, and I operated on him for cancer of the stomach. And I said, "You need more treatment because there are still cancer cells in you." He said, "No, springtime's coming. I want to go home and make the world beautiful. So when I die, I'll leave a beautiful world." Now, he is not trying not to die. Just make a beautiful world. 6 years later, my nurse handed me his chart. I said, "He's dead. We got 2 patients with the same name." She said, "Open the door." So I opened the door, and there sat John. "I have a hernia from lifting boulders in my landscape business." Well, he became my therapist, you see, because he was in love with the world. He wasn't trying not to die. He was trying to make a beautiful world. I may add, he lived to 91.
Wow.
And I gave a lecture about him and his wife at their 70th wedding anniversary, because I wanted to teach people what a wonderful couple they were, living life. And yes, he was my therapist. I would go with him, walking in the woods, seeing, you don't see weeds anymore. You see life and colors. And that's something I've learned too, because God talked to me one day, not too long ago, and said, Bernie, you see the blue sky? Yeah, that's consciousness. You see the yellow sun? Yeah, that's energy. What happens when you put them together? You get green. Every spring, life is born again.
Oh, wow.
And how beautiful it is. But when are the leaves most beautiful? Before you die. You're not worried then about how you behave, what you do. So accept your mortality and live that beauty. And I know that in mornings I would go out walking and I always was in awe of nature. And now God explained it to me. Yeah. Because I used to think, who decided the colors?
That's a good
And
question.
even the wisdom, yeah, because we had our street paved years ago.
Huh.
I noticed the pavement cracked and a plant came through. And I started reading about it. I thought, how the hell did it manage to break through pavement? How did it know which way it's up? It's in the and you learn seeds know gravity. And so I brought the family down, 5 kids and my wife. I said, we're going to have a therapy session. Come with me. And I said, look, if you ever run into a problem, I want you to act like that plant. You know where to go, what to do, keep pushing. And one of the kids said, what are you getting so excited about? It's a skunk cabbage. And I busted out laughing. I said, it's not what it is, it's what it did. You know, but they weren't as impressed as I was with the skunk cabbage.
Yes, they will.
Yeah, but it's a teacher for all of us, the wisdom that's in our body. Because again, like the self-induced healing, you cut your finger, you don't get a book on how to heal. You cover it with a Band-Aid and it gets better by itself. Yeah. So what God has put into us is amazing.
Yeah, Dr. Siegel, during this pandemic, what you're talking about may be beneficial to so many, because now we hope the pandemic we're almost over it. We hope. But many people are still gonna have to reorganize themselves after everything that happened.
Yeah. And the other was trying to tell them that the vaccine isn't something to be worried about also. You know, I could have a reaction, I could this, I could that. But like with chemotherapy or other things, if you pictured yourself going and getting vaccinated every day for a month and then go get vaccinated, your body will say, oh, this is no problem. So it walks in and gets vaccinated because it's had 30 vaccinations with no side effects. You see? And this is what I'm trying to teach people. Prepare your mind and body for what is coming in your life. You know, that even if you're going to go, you know, apply for a job, see yourself being successful. Don't walk in a panic. Oh, I'm going to, you know, what am I wearing? Do I look okay? Did I say the right thing? Stop it. They're going to hire you. You're wonderful. Yeah. You know, it's like see yourself the way a loving mother would see you, and then everybody reacts that way to you. Yeah, and your attitude. One more attitude story. I used to go around the hospital, and if I saw an employee caring for a patient in a beautiful way, I would go up and say, "What's your name?" And they'd look at me like, "What the hell did I do?" And they would tell me their name. And then I'd make them a gift pin with a rainbow, you know, in the sky and bring it to them and say, here, this is a gift for you for the way you treat people. I want to thank you. And then they'd realize, oh, it wasn't I did something wrong, because I didn't want them to know, you know, it was a trick to say, what's your name? But after a lot of the pins got given out, they would know there's another loving person. So it was like a club in the hospital. And one day I walked up to a medical secretary. What's your name? She's the only person who ever asked, why do you want to know? And I thought, wow, she doesn't think I'm mad at her or going to criticize her. And so I said, I want to give you a gift. You have such a wonderful effect on people. She said, sit down. I'll tell you a story. She said, when I took the job, I hated it. I couldn't stand the doctors and nurses and how they treated me and their patients. And so after 2 weeks, I went to the front office and I said, I quit. I'm going home. They said, you can't quit. You have to give 2 weeks notice. She said, okay, you got it. I got up every day miserable for 2 weeks. The last day I got up happy and I went to work happy, and I noticed something. All the people around me were happy. So I didn't quit. I decided to come in happy. And that's an exact quote. And you know, that's how you learn how much your attitude has to do with your life and the people around you and everything else.
What is life?
And to tell you something, when you were mentioning about doctors, I was in the hospital for some infection, you know, because between the kids and my work, I got so exhausted, I came down with an infection. And boy, I learned a hell of a lot by being a patient. See, then I became a much better doctor because I knew what it was like to lie there in the bed and all the craziness that goes on. And really, if I were running medical education, I wouldn't let anybody be a doctor till they spent a week in bed in the hospital. And you don't have to get sick. You see, part of your education, I would say, they take you and they put you in a hospital where people don't know you for a week and give you some terrible diagnosis, and you just stay there for a week and see how you're treated. And then you come back to medical school, and you'd be a hell of a lot better taking care of people once you've had that experience. What I call natives and tourists. If you're a tourist, you don't know what the native is exposed to. So we need to know what the patient is experiencing.
I have to say, Dr. Siegel, at least, even if the medical education hasn't changed yet, but we have your books, and this can make, I would say to our audience, that's a good plan. Every doctor you meet, give one of Dr. Siegel's books,
Right.
and hopefully that's going to educate them.
Give them a birthday present.
Right?
I mean, that's something I often tell people. Find out your doctor's birthday, give them a humorous card, give them a gift. Then you become a person to them. See, I do know one doctor who has parties for his patients. You know, like once or twice a year, he'll have a big party at a restaurant and everybody can come and be together.
Oh, wow.
But when you can make your doctor smile, they don't forget you. Whether it's in the hospital or, you know, even hang a baby picture of yourself on the wall in your hospital room. When people come in and say, oh, what a cute kid, who is it? The answer is me. Yeah. So all those things work. And,
Wow.
you know, I got to tell you one more. There was one hospital where they had what they called a dying room, where people were so critical, they got put in this room and it killed them because it was known as the dying room. You know, if you weren't doing well and they put you in that room, and meant, oh, I'm going to die. Yeah. Well, this one fellow was so weak, he couldn't even control the television. So they put him in a room with 3 guys who were willing to take care of him, you know, other patients, and put the TV on. He could watch a baseball game, whatever. And the nurse said she went on vacation, came back, went in that room, and I know that he was in, my mind is going. He wasn't in the room with the guys anymore, because she went in there and said, where is he? And they said, oh, they put him back in the dying room. Oh. So he went there, and there's the guy lying there. And she said, what happened? And he said, well, they put me back in the dying room, but it isn't working. So she grabbed him and moved him back with the other guys so he could watch television. But see, even the best hospices have graduations and dropouts because they help you get your life in order, and then you feel better and you go home. Yeah.
Wow.
And I mean, I have there's so many funny stories because this one woman was so neurotic. She was afraid of everything. I mean, her kids said, "Our mother drives us crazy. I mean, she won't do anything, go anywhere, afraid, flying in a plane, going." And then she developed cancer. And I got phone calls from the kids saying, "Our mother's driving us crazy. She just went whitewater rafting." And, she was doing things that were just insane, risking herself and her life and her, breaking bones. And the kids were now going nuts because they couldn't stop her from doing these things. Just before they couldn't even get her to go out of the house because she was so nervous about everything.
Oh, wow. So, Dr. Siegel, you are talking about a new way of living life, of working in life, or relationships, which I would consider something that we look forward in the future. In Spiritism, in the Gospel according to Spiritism, as you were speaking, I couldn't help it to open to a page when the spirit of St. Augustine comes and talks about the fact that our planet is changing and it's regenerating itself.
Yeah.
And he says that we should expect that in this transition, we're going to see a world where people are going to be more satisfied with themselves, happier with one another, more kind, and in greater solidarity. What do you think about it?
Yes, that we're all family. One of our sons raises chickens. Their colors and design is beautiful. I love going over there in the afternoon and sitting and looking at chickens. They're like rainbows and colors, and they all get along.
Oh.
And the trouble is with people, I don't know why God didn't make us like chickens. We'd all be interesting and love, and beautiful to each other. But yes, we need to be recognized. You know what I mean? If I have 5 kids, I don't want 5 other kids to come in here and I can't tell who my kids are if we were all alike. But the one thing I always say to people, see, I have a picture of a heart.
Mm-hmm.
And it's either a picture of a heart of a black man or mine. And I'll hold the picture up and you tell me which one it is. And people say, well, I can't tell you who it is, what it is. Right. We're all the same color inside. And why are we different outside? So we know each other. If we were like a bunch of chickens, I mean, we wouldn't know who, came in the house. And we need to be different to be recognized, but not to separate ourselves. And the kids understand this. They're affected by their adults who teach them the wrong things. Because when you go into grade school, and I used to do a lot of storytelling to children, and I'd say, where are we all alike? And they immediately point to their hearts.
Oh, wow.
And they understand that. But if you said, because I had a black minister who was a friend of mine come over the house one day, and we talked, then we went outside, and I didn't know some of his friends were still sitting in the car. So I went over to them and I said, I have a picture of one of us and you can't tell who it is. And they looked at me like, what are you, on drugs? Drunk? What are you talking about? He's black, you're white. But the minister standing next to me immediately took his hand and pointed it at his heart. And I said, see, I know he knew what I'm trying to teach you. Yeah, that's the kind of guy he was. And I think if we would just accept that and understand that and become one family, we're all God's children. And as I say, God made differences so we know each other, not to fight over. And the animals, that's why I say there's such, because I killed the dog, I know I've been saving animals to make up for that in my past life too. One of my books is Love, Animals, and Miracles. It talks about the Siegel Zoo. I mean, you wouldn't believe what our house was like. with everything running loose, as well as fenced in around the house. We broke every zoning law. Let me put it at that. But everybody knew we were doing it because we loved them. You know what I mean? So the police didn't turn me in for having all these creatures, from skunks to everything else in the house. But when you see like a tiger nursing a little baby pig, you'd say, why did the tiger eat this thing?
Yeah.
You know? But that love is there. And it's those same hormones, as I talked about, what changes us. The oxytocin, serotonin levels, they go up in a mother when she's nursing her baby and she bonds to him.
Yeah.
And those things can go up when we pet a dog too in us. So it's those bonding hormones that really could make us family. And we've got to work with love. I tell people to become a love warrior.
Oh.
Now, how the hell do you do that?
Yeah.
I'll tell you.
Huh.
The one that's in my book, 365 Prescriptions for the Soul, I had forgotten about this story, and I'm rereading my book. And it said, it's happened up in Cape Cod. The traffic was terrible in the summer. Everybody's up there on vacation. The young man in the car behind us was blowing his horn and screaming, cursing about the traffic. And I'm getting it because I'm in the car in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
I asked the policeman to talk to him and tell him to be quiet. And the cop, it blew my mind. He said, no, that's not my job. I'll tell you, cops can be as bad as doctors. I was a police surgeon too. So I know why you become a cop is as bad as why you become a doctor or anything else. Mm-hmm. And I say to anybody, write down why you became whatever you became, your job, and look at it. But anyway, I got out of the car and the kids are yelling, he could have a gun, he could have a gun. And I walked over to him and his window was down. It was summertime. And I said, I want you to know something. I love you. I'm sorry your parents don't. What do you think he did?
Started crying.
He stopped screaming, made a U-turn, and drove away.
Oh.
And I hope that where he drove was home to say to his parents, you don't love me. Yeah. And so I have done this more than once on the streets. When people have been violent, there have been fewer of them on the streets lately, but you know, somebody screaming, yelling, you don't know what the hell it is. I walk over and our family has stopped saying to me, they can have a gun. They know that isn't going to stop me. I walk over and I say, I don't know what's going on in your life, but I want you to know I love you. And I hope things get better for you. And every single time they have shut down, turned, and walked away quietly. And the people on the street are always, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. Thank you for teaching me that. Oh my God. Because, you know, they're all worried. Are we going to get killed? Are we going to get shot? And then this crazy guy goes over and says, I love you. But love is a powerful weapon. And I'd rather say I love you to somebody than I hate you, even for my last few minutes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But Dr. Siegel, the way you're saying, the conclusion is we need to teach it to our children.
Yeah, they need to be brought up with love.
With love.
You
Our parents need
don't
support.
have to say, I like what you're doing, so the kids understand, but I love you. Oh, one of our kids who drove me insane, that was his way of getting time. I mean, he's very smart, but he did a lot of, crazy things, skipping school, hiding in a closet. I mean, his parents didn't know what he was doing because his siblings would lie. But he got a lot of time, so some of them didn't feel loved. But they also came to me and said, you don't love me as much as my brother. I said, what are you talking about? Well, he gets 40% of your time, and we should each be getting 20. I said, he's driving us nuts. So, that also let them know I do love you, but he's driving us crazy. So they didn't feel unloved. But I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, they're all adults now. An email came from him to my wife and I. He said, I want you to know I love you and that I'm sorry for all the problems I caused in the past. And I want to thank you for all your love. And I didn't want to die without having told this to you. So I'm sending it today. And what a beautiful email to be told I love you from your child. And, he still can drive you crazy, but he's so bright. He can, he'll, like, if something happens, he'll come running over and fix it. And that sort of thing. And he's the one with all the chickens and, animals. I mean, he loves life, but he's just his unique way of thinking and doing things, that isn't, you might say he isn't normal. Let's put it that way. But being normal is not good either. So they each have their own way and their own talents and likes and dislikes. But giving them their freedom. One of them said to me, I want to go to automotive and diesel school. Now, this is a kid with an IQ that's off the charts. He's so bright. And I thought, you're going to end up being an auto mechanic with all your talent. Well, but I had learned by then, say, let him do it. There's no point fighting. And so off he goes to automotive and diesel school. Then when he's done, he calls me and says, all right, I want to go to college now. He liked building things and models. So automotive and diesel school, cars became like his toy. And then he went to college and law school. And, that I don't know what would have happened if I said, no, you can't. But we had more fun with him fixing cars in the front of the house there, and all old cars, and he'd restore them. And I used to go to beauty contests with him with these cars. And it was fascinating for people to look at the car and look at the nuts and bolts, and they knew what happened in that year. And so it became a really interesting thing to do. And I have to tell you one good thing. One day I came out of the house, there was no car left for me to use to go to a lecture. All that was there was this old wreck. And I looked at it and I saw it's got license plates. Let me see if it starts. And it started. So I jumped in and I drove it about a half hour or so, 45 minutes to this place. And I pulled in, parked, went in and gave my lecture. And everybody was so hushed and listening. At the end, I said to the person who invited me, what's going on here? She said, what do you mean? The audience. They're just so quiet and listening so intently. I mean, it's not normal. And she said, they're so impressed by your humility. I said, what are you talking about? The car you drove up in. We expected a Mercedes or a Cadillac, and you drove up in that. Your humble nature is so wonderful. And I busted out laughing. That's the only car I had to use. But it just shows you the crazy things that affect people. Everybody loved me because I drove up in a wreck.
Yeah. And you wrote the book with your grandson, Charlie, right?
Yes, the poems.
The poems.
That was you could say no coincidence, but he's quite a kid. I mean, he's way ahead of him, spiritually and all than most people at his age, around 30. And so we were sending each other stuff and poems. And then suddenly it was like, wow, look at the things you've written. Look what I've written. So we got together around the poetry. And, the title of the book, I thought I had it lying here, but, when you realize how perfect everything is. But to see what he was able to become aware of at his age, that took me twice as many years to write about. And I would tell everybody, write poetry, keep a journal. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you call the journal poetry or not, because people would say, it didn't rhyme. That's not what it's about. It's about my bringing forth what's within me. So I would write poems about everything. And my wife woke me up to the fact that your journal and your poems aren't funny. And I said, my life isn't funny. She said, listen to these stories. And she told me stories I told them that had them all laughing. You never put those in your journal. You never write poems about those. And boy, that was therapy for me. I realized the only thing, see, it was back to the uncovering. I knew I had to get it out. It was in paintings, poems, everything. And so I started writing every night. And one night I forgot to hide the journal. And that's when she said, there's nothing funny in it. But she woke me up and I started remembering the good things and put them in. Yeah.
So what would you say to people, since you're such a wonderful encourager, what would you say to people that have this self-doubt?
Well, God loves you and so do I, is the best way of saying it. That you are special, you have talent, you have feelings. But I forgot who said it. If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. Maybe it's from the Bible even. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. And that's what people have to realize. Don't store it up inside of you. Bring it forth. And tell the people who drove you crazy, I love you. It'll drive them crazy. But to love yourself, reparent yourself is something I call it too. Put your baby pictures up around the house and love that kid. I mean it. Every time you go past your picture, say, I love you. Remember what that lady did with the mirror and loving her body. So when we love ourselves, the body responds. And, it's other people have been abused, have been unloved. So then it gets passed on. But we can stop it by love and bring out what's inside of you. That's why I say the writing, the journaling, the poetry, and it doesn't have to rhyme. I wasn't worried about it rhyming. I was just about writing what I was feeling, and knew I felt better after that because I learned something from it.
There you go. Alan Swift, who is a listener here from Canada. Thank you. Yeah, he sings from the Gospel of Thomas. Dr. Siegel, it's hard to say I have to end the interview. I don't want it to end. I know. I know everybody who is here. They are sending me text messages too, and I know.
Well, invite me back. But I laugh because I said George is talking, so I can't stop. And when I started giving talks, people would hold signs up. Stop.
No, don't stop.
Yeah. Because they had it like a lecture for an hour and a half or 2 hours, and then they were in an auditorium, they had to get out. And so they were holding up signs and everything. One more thing I'll tell you, one more story about our differences. I walked into this hotel where I was going to give a lecture, and I met a black lady and we started chatting. And I said to her, oh, you coming to my lecture? She said, no, I can't afford to buy a ticket. I said, well, then just come to the door and tell them you're my cousin and you're my guest and come in. And I went in. She had something else to do, and then she was going to come back. I'm on the stage, and I see her show up at the door. And I can see how funny the receptionist is, because she comes up and says, I'm his cousin. He invited me in. And, they step back and look at her like, excuse me, you're black. He isn't, he's white. You're his cousin? I could see that going on. So off the stage, I yelled, hey, cuz, good to see you. Come on in. And then they all went, when she came in. But that's the crazy kinds of things I love to do, just whether I'm even at the airport. There was a guy so covered with tattoos. He was a freak. and nobody sat near him. Everybody was afraid of him. But I go over and sit down right next to him. And I said, "Why are you trying to be so inconspicuous?" And he bursts out laughing, and we become friends, you know? And last but not least, if somebody says to you, because this I really mean, so many people say, "How you doing? How are you?" They're not really caring. It's their way of saying hello, you know? So if people say to me, "How are you? How are you doing?" I say, "Don't ask. I got a lot of problems. I'm out of my antidepressant. My doctor's on vacation, and I can't refill my prescription." Now, what I learned again, how many people are in trouble. I have had people, like when I say that at the checkout counter, the people behind me say, "Will these help you?" And they pull them out of their pocketbooks and pockets and say, "Will these help you?" They're on antidepressants. See, but if you say to them, "How you doing?" "I'm fine." So I've taught people, when you see me, say, "You're looking very well today. Don't ask me how I am." And I was in one store where the new clerk said, "How are you today?" I said, "Don't ask me. Next time I come in, say, 'You're looking very well today.' I don't want to be reminded of all my troubles." And everybody in the store was like, "Oh, what a stinking guy. What kind of rude." Then an old time employee came out of the back of the store and yells, "Hey, you're looking very well today." And the whole store burst out laughing. But the biggest one that happened to me, and these are all true, I was in the post office and I keep telling them, "Don't ask me how are you?" And the guy does it again. I said, "I've run out of my antidepressant. My doctor's on vacation. I got a poke in the back." You know, somebody on the line. I turn around. She said, "I'm a psychiatrist. I specialize in depression. Here's my card. Maybe I can help you." And I busted out laughing. And everybody's looking at me. "What are you laughing about? She's trying to help you." I said, "Look, I'm a doctor. It's a joke. I don't mean it." Now, when I go in the post office, they say, "What are you going to do today as a performance to get us to laugh?" Yeah.
Dr. Siegel, I'm going to say this in the name of everybody here. We love you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
George is in a good mood today.
Oh, wow. You are the good mood. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for all the works you've been doing, and we need more of you. I've already told people if they want to know more, BernieSiegelMD.com.
Yes.
Right? And they can...
SiegelMD.com. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was I going to say? Oh, there's CDs there they can use to meditate, visualize. I know another person named Vanessa, and I wasn't sure who was going to call today, but she and I have something on YouTube, so you might be able to find that if you want to keep listening to me talking. Yeah.
Great. We want more, and hopefully you'll be able to come back again here at Kardec Radio. We want to thank you so much for this wonderful healing time for us.
Bless you. Thank you.
A big hug from all of us. Everybody's here thanking. Thank you, friends. And keep watching, because we still have much more today as Kardec Radio.
One more thing. George never stops.
Yeah.
You know, in the beginning, when you were having trouble hearing me, and I just pushed some buttons and it worked. And that was something somebody else said too, that when you get into this mystical realm, electricity is involved. And I have had electrical problems in my car and home fix themselves. And I really felt it was totally mystical. You know, when you push a switch and the light never goes on.
Yeah.
And I called the electrician and he had changed jobs, so he couldn't come. I push it a day later and it goes on and kept going on. And the same thing, a warning sign in the car has gone away. And I don't think that's, you know, a chance happening.
No.
I really think that it is all interconnected.
Yeah. People don't know that before we were on air, we were trying to connect and there were issues with the sound. And I thought, it's the spiritual connection. And I agree with you. I agree with you.
Okay.
Thank George too for being here with
Oh,
us
yes.
and guiding us. Thank you so much. Thank you. A
Bye.
big hug. See you
Thank you.
then. Bye, friends.